Hello, welcome to Colonel O'Truth's Miniature Issues. In today's episode, I'm designing the house of Grath, the merchant. This is just one of many structures I've built as this project has grown and grown. What started as a flat piece of foam is now a towering edifice. This is Undercrag City. Welcome to the Overcrag. Back to that sketch. I've decided with this piece that I want to incorporate elements of both the Overcrag and Undercrag into the design. As if Grath the merchant is setting himself apart from his neighbours. He's taken the basic shape of one of the local houses, but then built upwards and redesigned in the timber frame style of the houses of Undercrag City. And he's also kept the characteristic forward-swept eaves of the houses of the Overcrag. There's a bit of planning to do. I'm essentially building one building inside another one. As usual, I'm drawing as many pieces as I think I can before I get started. This helps me to visualize the whole process. You can see here the larger triangles are the main walls of the lower building with doors and windows drawn in them. And the smaller triangles I'm working on now will form the turret at the top. These lines mark out the heights of my windows. And finally, it's time to start cutting. Grath the merchant is not a native of Undercrag City or the Overcrag. His family were traders, and they arrived here from the lands to the north of the Overcrag, with no idea that Undercrag City lay beneath their feet. The towering cliffs into which Undercrag City is built form a natural boundary between the lands to the north and the lands to the south. Grath grew up a citizen of both, and the home that he built reflects his tastes. In fact, Grath likes Undercrag City so much, he spends more time in the Gate and Chapel Inn than he does at home. His successful business is largely administered to by his wife and 2 children. Anyway, back to the model. I've cut out most of the pieces and I'm starting to put things together. I'm working from the center out. The hole in the bottom will allow me to pass wiring through for my LEDs. On go the main walls. And the top of the turret. Already this is giving me quite a good idea of how this final piece is going to look. I'm also quickly throwing together another one of the basic houses. This is to go in the gap between Grath the merchant's house and number 1 Edge Lane. Maybe I'll call it number 2 edge lane. Now the forward swept eaves. Plenty of work for the pointy stick here. On they go, just at the front of the building. I've got to leave the rest of the roof off so that I can put the window glass in and the LEDs later on. And we'll give the little house the same treatment. Nothing more than a single wall at the moment. And not forgetting the top of the turret. With my basic structure in place, I can start adding the balsa wood details, beginning with the underside of the eaves. As usual, I've hand-drawn planking to give it that rough, irregular look that I like. I'm just gluing these in place, overhanging, and I'll trim them later when the glue's dry. It might look a little wasteful, but all of this will get reused. And now my timber framing. That piece didn't want to lie flat, so it took a little manipulation. If you're enjoying this video and you haven't already, please do like and subscribe, and feel free to leave questions and comments for me. I answer all of them. Also, Mrs. O'Truth and I would like to thank everybody who left such wonderful words of encouragement and support recently. We really value this fantastic little community. You make it so much easier for us to keep going with this project. Thank you very much. Back to the little house. I've added a quick door, and now for a quick window box. And now my matchstick gables. Hide the join with a little decoration. And it's back to Grath's house. I'm starting this detailing with the main pieces of the A-frame construction. and then I'll add smaller details in. Almost there. On go the matchstick gables. You'll also notice that the windows in the top floor are peaked. I think that's the first time I've done this anywhere in this whole build. Adding a few details like this really increases the impression of bulk. And you need to take this into account when you're making a model like this. You have to start off slightly smaller than the end product is going to be. Now it's time to think about the landscape. I've cut this piece of foam to fit onto the top of the rest of the model, and I'm taking out the piece that Grath's house will be mounted on. This is so that I can easily carve steps up the two sides. I start by cutting out the slope where I want my steps, and then one by one, from the bottom to the top, I cut them in with a knife. And then draw in my stonework with a pencil. Time to undercoat the buildings. Everything gets painted light grey as usual. And halfway through the undercoating, I realised I'd missed some details. Pieces of matchstick. It's a quick fix. Anyway, when the grey is all on goes the brown ink everywhere. My steps have been painted dark grey, and they get a light grey dry brush. You'll notice that the steps are very wide. A lot of this width is going to disappear when I sculpt with clay later, so I've overcompensated. Same stonework on the little house. And then pale yellow over all of the brown, focusing on the panels. White dry brushing over the stone. And over everything else. Getting plenty in the panels again. And now it's brown ink time again, over all of the timber work. I did think about making this building very bright and gaudy, but I thought the changes in colour, as well as the changes in architecture and style, would be too much. It wouldn't look like it belonged here. As it is, by keeping a few things the same, I can create a building that stands out from the rest, while obviously still belonging. Tidying up the insides with black ink. Now that the outsides are painted, I can add the window glass. This is my usual acetate sheet that's been daubed over with Mod Podge to obscure it. Once that's in, LEDs. I'm just poking holes through the model where I want them to sit. With the LEDs all wired together, I have to raise the building up slightly higher. The wiring has become quite bulky underneath the model. So I'm building a frame and cutting some extra steps. On we go. PVA and a few dobs of superglue. It's all a bit thrown together, but it'll look good in the end. A quick chimney. And finally, it's time to start building the roofs. Now the roof beams, another characteristic of the Overcrag. I'm starting to like this roof design so much that I wish I thought of it right at the beginning of the project. I wonder what Undercrag City would have looked like if all of the houses had been slightly more stylized like these. Never mind. Now my roof tiles. Back to the old cat food packet. Some thin strips of paper to form flashings. Strips of card along the top. This is all just adding extra detail. Some tiny triangles. And bits of plastic tube for the chimneys. Back to the little house, I'm adding my hinges. And the big house too. A touch of silver paint, a touch of rust ink. The tiles have been painted light grey, and it's time to play around with some DAS. Plenty of PVA, and I'm not being too worried about how much stonework I cover up here. This is where things start to look organic, by working over things that I've done before. With the clay in place, it gets a good thick coating of PVA and a lot of sand. While that's drying, I can put the brown ink on the roof. Dry brush pale yellow. Dry brush white. Not forgetting the edges. And let's paint all of that earth in a nice brown. Rust ink all over the roof tiles. Pale dry brushing on the earth. A light yellow. Touch up the edges of the timber where I've got onto it with other colours. And a thin black wash over all of the stonework. At this point, the slowest part of the process is drying time. Each step takes only moments, and some of them I have to wait almost an hour in between. Here's a thin brown wash. That can be done while the black wash is still wet. If they run together, it just adds character. And speaking of characters, how did that Blood Bowl troll get into the frame? Never mind, back to the roof. Touching up those little triangles in gold. And now I can start adding my greenery. Lots of PVA. A few clumps of flowers. Some grasses. And then cover the rest with static grass. Just piling it on. And at last it's time to add it into the rest of the model. I've enclosed the little house, connected up my wires, And now I can play with clay again. And blending all of this together. If blend is the right word, it's quite messy. Lots more glue, lots more sand, and get working with the brown paint. My final ink wash. And it's vegetation time. Blending the new in with the old. So that was the house of Grath the Merchant. I think it's one of my favourites so far, and it's inspired me to do more creative things with the next few. We'll see what happens. There's still a lot of empty space up there on the overcrag, and this part of the model is already turning into something much more than I had expected it to be. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.